When it comes to the stories of Elden Ring, something that I feel this game does a lot better than its predecessors is give us a glimpse into the psychology of its characters. And I believe one of the greatest examples of this in the game is Rennala. It's one of the most compelling tales of tragedy and what the effects of such a trauma can have on somebody's mind. But today we're going to dive into the lore of this character and really unravel the mind state of Rennala that we find her in. But we're not going to do this in the way that you're expecting. The way I'm going to tell you this story is by dissecting the OST, the soundtrack that plays in the boss fight, and how we might be able to use it to answer one of the biggest questions surrounding this character. But before we dive into that, I need to say a big thank you to my friend Chordvessel, who helped me uncover a lot of these findings. And if you like the idea of Souls-inspired music, definitely check out his channel that I'll have linked down below. But now, let me get you up to speed on the basics of Rennala's story. Throughout the many ages that have risen and fallen in the lands between, one of the major events that would have shaped the future of the history surrounding the lands were the Liurnian Wars. Wars between the House of the Erd Tree and the House of the Moon. Prior to the rise of the Erd Tree itself, the order of the world was governed by the stars, which was religiously studied by the Carian royal family. Rennala, as the primary queen of the Carian royal family, led the armies in battle, where she encountered the fiercest champion, Radagon. Radagon's prowess on the battlefield would be the deciding factor in the First Liurnian War. However, it wouldn't prevent them from rising up a second time. But an interesting exchange happened during that second war, when Radagon and Rennala met on the battlefield. An infatuation would build between the two, leading to their matrimony, signaling the end of the war and a time of peace. And this time of peace and joint between Rennala and Radagon would lead to the birth of 3 demigod children, Praetor Rykard, General Radahn, and a daughter who would become an Empyrean, Ranni the Witch. But this time of short-lived peace came to an end in a mystery, when at some point after the exile of the Tarnished and Godfrey's turn, Radagon decided to abandon Rennala and cleave to the side of Queen Marika. At this point, both Rykard and Radahn had abandoned their Carian role and turned to serve in the footsteps of their father, taking up shards of the Golden Order. A civil war had begun to spur in Liurnia, and at Radagon's departure, Rennala was locked away in the Academy of Raya Lucaria, in the confines of the Grand Library, clutching dearly to the last artifact of her husband, an amber egg with a rune capable of birthing someone anew. And so we begin our journey into combat with Rennala and our dive into the soundtrack that guides us into the reasons for her despair.
Hush, little Calva. I'll soon birth thee anew, a sweeting, fresh and pure.
Our combat begins seeing Rennala hovering above her children, juvenile scholars of the Raya Lucaria Academy, who have become entirely dependent upon Rennala's rebirth. We find Rennala with a broken mind, in a perpetual state of enacting rebirth, taking full advantage of the object of her husband's gratitude, and also breaking the minds of the Sweetings. The music introduces us to this concept. Take a listen to how this is composed. The OST introduces itself with a pedaling motif, slowly shifting between high and low, unable to find its true note. It's a reflection of the mind state of the occupants of the library, consistently in a flux of identity, unable to find their true selves. The juvenile scholars maintain an identity of infants despite their age. And Rennala has lost her identity of a warrior queen and reverted to an infant stage of one sole purpose. So just as the music continues to pedal and replay the same measures over and over again, the music itself is in a constant state of being rebirthed. Although after several rebirths, it does begin to form some semblance of an identity. The introduction of a main melody is introduced to us on a solo violin, an octave higher than the measures played before. It's a shrill note, almost like a cry. The music teaches us of the full tragedy that happened to Rennala. She's wailing in despair over her husband's departure, a betrayal by the one she loved most. But this melody still continues to pedal to repeat itself. Though the act of rebirth wipes one's memory, she will always be reminded of the tragedy. And as the vibrato of the violin continues to grow, so too does her sadness. A choir has now joined the composition. Young voices upholding the melody. They're the voices of reason in the song. The followers attempting to remind Rennala of her queen status. The sweetings dependent on her duty of rebirth. Though they themselves are not fully realized, the chords they sing maintain a tinge of sour, and these voices battle the underlying cello for the dominance of the melody. The cello is playing contradictory notes. It doesn't fully agree with the choir, eerily reminiscent of the status of the glintstone sorcerers in the academy, who remain doubtful of Rennala's capacity to rule, yet despite that doubt continue to remain under her service. The cello supports the melody, though in a questionable manner. But all sounds become stifled as Rennala is defeated, and we begin our transition into the second phase.
My beloved, have no fear. I will hold thee. Patience. Ye will be countless born, forever and ever. Upon my name is Ranni the Witch. Mother's rich slumber shall not be disturbed by thee. Foul trespasser. Send word far and wide. Of the last queen of Caria, Rennala of the Full Moon. And the majesty of the night she conjureth.
The music of the second phase takes a notably different turn. It begins on a mystical assortment of notes, almost as if the listener is suspended, held in a feeling of anti-gravity that is honestly up to the listener to decipher. Is it the feeling of suspension from the water? Is it the feeling of anti-gravity from space? Or are we suspended in amniotic fluid like a fetus, undergoing a rebirth of our own? The composition has now become extremely layered. We have a vast assortment of wind instruments, keys, and a choir creating a great sense of weight to the song. Because Rennala's mindscape has now found its identity. Her moon is restored. The twinkling of the keys reflects the stars in the background. The heavy choir is the moon that we're now witnessing for the first time. And just as Ranni and Rennala herself witnessed their moons at a respective youth, giving them their power, we are now witnessing a higher knowledge that we shouldn't. Something mystical beyond our comprehension. The chords are now creating an uneasy tone. While in the first phase they maintained a gentle tune, during the second part of this fight there's both a beauty and a horror to Rennala's character. The music is trying to warn us that what we're seeing is not reality. It's attempting to pull the melody out of the current tune and restore our sense of what is real. The Rennala that we see in this phase of the fight is nothing more than a projection, but we're far too entranced by the music and by the sight to ever know. At the end of the song, the familiar melody of the first motif is reintroduced. It creates almost a feeling of pain nostalgia, but is the pain in remembering over the moon that she once held so dear, or the majesty of her queenship, or is it that after we defeat her, all that's left is a reminder of the tragedy and the pain of facing reality, that Radagon is never coming back, and that no matter how many times she rebirths herself, she'll never be able to win his favor again. There is a small debate over the idea of why Radagon left, and one of the common beliefs is that he left because of a higher duty and locked her away to protect her. But I believe due to the nature of the OST when we fight Rennala, the truth of the matter is far more tragic and far more sinister. This is entirely speculation on my part, but I tend to lean to the idea that Radagon was sort of always under the influence of Queen Marika, and that it wasn't his choice to leave, it was rather part of a larger plot. If Marika was in control the entire time, then what better way to get rid of the queen who poses such a threat than by breaking her heart and giving her a gift that makes her forget her identity as the majestic war queen. But guys, that's going to pretty much do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on it. And do me a favor and hop over to Chordvessel's channel and show them some love. The new album's on the way, and that is something you're definitely going to want to check out. But with all that, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.